Hi, and welcome back to the New Believers Project. There are two things I want you to know about why God allows bad things to happen. And I use the word allow careful to mean that God does not inflict you with it. But from the context of if any bad thing is happening to you currently, or you've had to experience a very bad patch in life, and God is on the throne, it definitely means God allowed it to happen. It definitely means God was on the throne while you're experiencing it. So that's why I said why God allows it to happen. And there are two things, two major reasons I want to explain in this video and in another video. The first reason is the fact that those bad things, those supposedly bad things, those trials, those painful times you're going through, it's because God allows them to happen because those things are meant to produce in you something bigger. They have a purpose. And the purpose they are to produce in you has the what they are meant to produce in you have a bigger purpose than you could imagine. And the second reason why God allows the bad things to happen is because sometimes even those things we call tragedy, those things we call bad things in and of themselves were actually victories. And I'm going to explain that in another video. So let's drill down into the first one. Why God allows bad things to happen. And then the first is that because those things, those bad patches, those difficult times are to produce in you a bigger purpose. The Bible let us understand in Romans chapter 15 verse 4 that the stories which are written aforetime, the things which are written in scriptures, they are written for our learning, so that those of us who go to the scriptures might have endurance, might have comfort. You see, let me explain this way. If Sarah did not have to go through a waiting time, if Hannah did not have to go through a waiting time, how do we encourage people who are waiting on the Lord today? You see, some of those difficult seasons in your life, as it were, they are to produce a bigger purpose. So look at the trials of Hannah and Abraham, Anna and Sarah, for example. In their time, it was definitely difficult. It's difficult to wait for 1 year, talk less about years. Anna had to wait so long that Penina had nothing less than 2 kids. Sarah had to wait for the minimum 25 years. It was difficult. But when you look back at it in retrospect, you understand that their trials of that time has become a testimony, has become strength for a lot of people to run by now. So what if you understand that the trial which you currently face, or the trial which you have faced before, or the trials which are still yet to come in your life, it is because they will produce in you a bigger purpose. It's because they are to produce in you strength. It's because they are to produce in you patience. I'm sure a lot of us can look back at certain things you've gone through in life and you can just tell that this shaped you up for what you are today. We've heard it a lot of times. A lot of times, even motivational speakers use it. But it's also biblical. And why is this important to even say on a platform like this to Christians? It's because it is very possible for Christians to know that, oh, before I give birth, before I have a baby, I'm going to go through pain. And then they are fine with it. They are prepared for that. They don't question that. But when it has to do with life generally, when it has to do with maybe getting something done, or they just, when they go through certain tough time, we look at it that where is God? Yes, those times can be very painful, but you see, the moment where you begin to question the existence of God, or you begin to question your faith, or some skeptics begin to use that as a reason to question God. A lot of people will tell you they don't believe in God. They believe there's an outer power there, but they just wonder if there is a God, why does bad things happen? I'm sorry to say, but it has nothing to do with the existence of a God. It says a lot about your ignorance. You see, to think that bad things happen and then it means there is no God says a lot that you don't even understand that is how the world works. It has a lot to do with how the world has been woven. For example, you go through a tough time. It's not because God hates you. It's not because because there is no God. It's because it is how the world is meant to function. For example, you can't become a medical doctor without passing an exam. It's part of life. You can't give birth without going through all the changes, all the pain that comes with delivery. It's part of life, and it is important for Christians to even know this, so that you don't go through life and suddenly think that, oh, everything is against me. Or you don't think because you're a Christian now, everything is meant to fall in line for you. And suddenly when they don't, you begin to think, oh, could it be because I sinned, God hasn't really forgiven me? It's important you have this perspective about life. You see, God is good, yes, we say. That God will not inflict you with pain. God is not punishing you with sickness because he wants to teach you a lesson. No. But there are times, biblical reasons for us to believe that God, he will remain God. God loves you as a child, but yet would allow you go through tough seasons in your life. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2 actually says that when you go through the rivers, when you go through the water, he said, I will be there with you. I mean, oh God, why do you have to be there with me through fire? Why don't you just allow me not go through fire? I mean, that's what someone would think. But I will have you know that in the wisdom of God, in the design of God, in the way God has designed it, in his omnipotence, in his sovereignty, in his wisdom, he has designed it that when you go through that tough season, it's going to produce in you something better. And that's why he says that when you go through it, that's why he's not saying I'll stop it. He says when you go through it. You see, the Bible is replete with examples of God saying he's going to be with you through tough times. The Bible is replete. As a matter of fact, hear what Jesus said in John chapter 16 verse 33. He said in 33, I have told you these things so that in me you would have peace. In this world you would have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. He was speaking directly to Christians, to the apostles at the time, and directly to us. Yes, we know this is in context of persecution for the sake of the gospel, but it has a lot to do with everything. So as a Christian, you need to understand this. You see, you've heard a lot of allow me to use the word, horrible stories about pregnancy. But yet we see a lot of people still bracing up and preparing to give birth. Why? Because we understand, somewhere in our mind, the knowledge helps us to go through it. Ask somebody close to you that just recently gave birth. Ask them, how did you do it? How did you navigate it? How did you? I'm sure one of the responses we know is just for a while. It's just going to be for a while. I recently read a post where someone was encouraging nursing parents and said, don't worry, it's just for a while. It doesn't last forever. You see, that's it. That knowledge just helps you. It helps you go through it. And that's why teaching like this is important for you as a Christian, to know that the reason that tough times will come, it will definitely come, and it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with whether because you're a sinner or because God hates you. It's because God allows it to happen because it's to produce in you something bigger. What if you know that your own testimony, the trials you're going through today, and tomorrow you come out of it, you're going through it because when you eventually come out of it, it will be a strength for another person tomorrow. So this is one reason, replete in scriptures with examples why God allows us to go through tough times. For example, let's use the story like the New Believers Project. I will always say that we'll tell you stories, biblical stories, and then bring context to it. You see, you understand from the previous episode that God had told Abraham that the children of Israel would go to a land where they will be slaves, and then he's going to bring them out of it. So in Exodus, we see Exodus chapter 14 and Exodus chapter 15, we see Moses march the children of Israel out of Egypt. You see, after he had done a lot of signs, a lot of wonders, he even parted the whole sea. You see, they went through dry ground, and then the enemies were drowned in it. And then the children of Israel went through the wilderness. They had the experience of manna. They had the experience of water coming out of a rock. They saw lots of signs. They went through a wilderness experience, as it were. So in Deuteronomy chapter 8, from verse 1, they are about to enter into the promised land. And then Moses begins to remind them of all that God has said. And then he begins to tell them, he begins to say to them that they should not forget. So listen, it says in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1, be careful to follow every command I am giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land that the Lord promised on oath to your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. What's the point to this text I just read? Is that the Bible said, Moses is telling them that, remember how you went through the wilderness, how you went through hunger, how you went through thirst, but God was there for you. And it says that this God did so that you might be able to teach your children. It's so that when you enter into the land that is bringing to you, you might be able to remember that there was such a time when I went through this difficult patch in my life, but God was there for you. So that if you ever find yourself in another difficult patch, you remember who God was for you there. Or if you find yourself, when you find yourself in plenty, you would not forget God. Guess what? This was the practice in Israel. So they would tell their kids, you see a lot of times in the Bible, the Bible that admonished them that you tell your children that I am the Lord that brought you out of Egypt and all that. You see, they went on doing that, passing it from generation to generation. And guess what? Many years after, the Messiah, who was equally a Jew, comes on the scene. And then he's in a very, very vulnerable state in the wilderness. And the devil comes to him and the devil says, if you are truly the Son of God, turn this stone to bread. Guess what? That's in Luke chapter 4. Guess what Jesus did? The Bible, I'm sure you know that verse where Jesus said that man shall not live by bread alone. That verse was taken directly from, Jesus quoted directly from Deuteronomy chapter 8. What am I trying to say here? That because of a tough season they went in their life, because of a certain wilderness experience, allow me to use that metaphor, they went through in their life, when God showed up for them at that time, they even got a learning, they got a revelation of God, they got an understanding that they now taught to generations to come. It served a bigger purpose, that even the Messiah used that to confront the enemy. What if you know? What if you have this perspective to tough seasons that they are to produce in you something bigger? If God who loves me, God who's planned for me and for good and not for evil, allows me to go through this tough time, it definitely is because he has something big for me. He has something bigger coming. I want you to know this. It saves you the stress. Pray. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it shapes your understanding that, oh, well, tough seasons. Another thing it does, it even lets you to pray. It helps you to pray if you understand that trials are just a part of the world. There are things that happen in this world. Tribulations are part of this, or you will understand to cast your dependence on God. Psalm 91, a very popular verse about the pestilence that walketh in darkness. Can you imagine what is ascribing to the day, to daytime and nighttime? There is even in the day, there is even in the night. The psalmist, what he's saying in a sense, is just that there is evil in it is just part of life. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it is an understand. It's not a victim mentality. It's not a defeatist mentality where you just feel, a lot of bad things will happen to me. No, it's not, you're not being a victim. You're not being paranoid to admit that these things are just part of life. You're not. As a matter of fact, you are getting yourself informed. You are bracing up yourself to fight. So it is important you have this understanding. It's important you have this perspective as a believer that tough times will come, difficult times will come, challenges will come at me. But guess what? The confidence you have is in Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2. It's the confidence which Jesus even said in John chapter 16 verse 33. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. So why have I done this video? To be honest, I've done this not because I know a lot of people have heard sermons on how God will fight for you in times of trouble. That's fine, and they've served their purpose. No need to re-emphasize it. But I think one thing that I want you to take out of this is to help your understanding to change how you approach or how you see trials and how you see difficult seasons. On the next episode, I'm going to explain the second reason. Thank you and see you on the next episode of the New Believers Project.